Paris at night never really sleeps. It just pretends to. Cars hiss along wet streets like tired snakes. A train sighs somewhere underground, even deeper than the one we will talk about later. A couple laughs too loudly outside a cafe that should have closed an hour ago. Someone drops a bottle. Somewhere, a phone vibrates with news that can wait until morning. Paris breeze. If you stand still long enough, you can feel it. The city hums through the soles of your shoes, through the stone, through time. Paris has been alive for a very long while, and it has picked up some habits. Noise is one of them. But beneath all of this, beneath the lights, the cafes, the late dinners, and early regrets, there is quiet. Not the awkward kind. Not the did I forget to turn something off kind. A deeper quiet. Imagine walking along the Seine at night. The water moves slowly, like it is trying not to wake anyone. Street lamps stretch themselves into the river, long and tired. You pass old buildings that have seen revolutions, lovers, wars, and very bad fashion choices. Above you, windows glow softly. Lives unfolding. Someone brushing their teeth. Someone falling asleep with the TV still on. Now imagine this. Directly beneath your feet, far below the pipes and wires and tunnels, there is a place that does not care about any of that. No traffic. No phones. No alarms. Just stone. Millions of people walk these streets every day. Tourists drag suitcases over cobblestones. Office workers complain about the weather. Street musicians play the same song they played yesterday and will play tomorrow. None of them stop to think about what is underneath. Why would they? Paris has trained them not to. The city is very good at distracting you. Fresh bread helps. So does wine, and art, and history written proudly on plaques above ground, where it can be admired and photographed and hashtagged. But Paris keeps its other history hidden. Beneath the city lies a second Paris. Older, stranger, and very, very quiet. The Catacombs. Even the word feels like it wants you to lower your voice. Catacombs are not unique to Paris, of course. Humans have been burying things underground since humans figured out digging was easier than carrying. But Paris took the idea and really committed to it. What most people don't realize is that the catacombs were not always meant for bones. They began as quarries. Deep scars carved into the earth to feed the growing city above. Stone was pulled out to build churches, bridges, homes, and dreams of permanence. And then, much later, the city ran out of space for the dead. Paris, it turns out, had a population problem. Too many living people, and far too many dead ones. Cemeteries overflowed. Graves collapsed. Bones mixed together like someone had shaken the box a little too hard. So the city did what cities often do when faced with an uncomfortable truth. It moved it underground. One by one, cart after cart, the remains of millions were carried down into the old quarries. Carefully stacked, organized, labeled in a way. Skulls facing outward, like silent librarians guarding shelves of femurs. That is the version most tourists know. The guided tour version. The version with safety rails and exit signs and gift shops that sell skull-shaped magnets. The version that ends neatly. But the catacombs are much larger than that. They stretch for miles. Some passages mapped, many not. Tunnels twist and fork and collapse. Walls sweat. Ceilings groan quietly under the weight of the city above, like they are holding a long breath. Down there, time behaves differently. Your footsteps sound too loud. Your breathing feels rude. The air is cooler, heavier, as if it has been waiting centuries for you to show up and now finds you mildly annoying. And somewhere deep in that underground silence, there was a man. Just one. At least, that's how the story is usually told. Long before urban explorers and warning signs and padlocked gates, someone chose to live where no one else wanted to be. Far from sunlight. Far from noise. Far from questions. A human presence, tucked into the bones of Paris itself. We will get to him. Slowly. No need to rush. The catacombs reward patience, and bedtime stories do too. For now, just hold this image. Paris above, alive and glowing, restless even in sleep. Paris below, still and dark, holding secrets like a clenched fist. Every step you take on the street presses gently down on stone. On tunnels. On history that does not move out of the way. The city trusts the ground beneath it without ever saying thank you. And the ground remembers everything. Some nights, when traffic thins and the city exhales, the silence below feels almost loud, like it is listening back, like it knows something the people above do not. Millions of lives pass overhead. Births, first kisses, last arguments. The catacombs do not react. They have seen all of this before. They will see it again. But once, just once, someone went down and did not come back up. Not lost, not trapped, stayed. And that is where our story truly begins. But for now, rest here at the edge of the city. Let the street noise fade. Let the hum soften into a whisper. Imagine the stone below your feet, cool and ancient, waiting patiently. Paris is breathing. The catacombs are not. And somewhere in that silence, a man is still living his quiet life, untouched by the world above, or so the legend says. Sleep easy. We will go down soon. Chapter 2, Beneath Paris, the birth of the catacombs. Paris did not plan the catacombs. That part matters. They were not a bold idea sketched by some candlelit genius who said, "You know what this city needs? A giant underground bone maze." No. The catacombs were born the way many strange things are born, out of a problem no one wanted to deal with. By the late 1700s, Paris was crowded, very crowded. Streets were tight, homes were stacked like tired books. People lived close, argued close, and unfortunately, died close too. And when people die, they need somewhere to go. Paris had cemeteries, many of them, old ones, famous ones, sacred ones, but they were full. Not almost full, not we can squeeze a few more in. They were overflowing. Bodies piled on top of bodies. Graves reopened again and again. Bones mixed. Coffins collapsed into wet soil. The smell drifted into nearby homes, into bakeries, into places where bread should smell like bread, not other things. Disease followed. People got sick. Very sick. Whole neighborhoods blamed the dead for poisoning the air. And honestly, they were not entirely wrong. The ground itself had become heavy with decay. Paris was struggling to live while being buried by its own past. The city panicked. Quietly, politely. Like a city that still wanted to look elegant while falling apart. Officials debated. Priests prayed. Doctors warned. Something had to be done. And then someone looked down. Beneath Paris, long before bones filled the tunnels, there was limestone. Soft, pale stone pulled from the earth to build the city above. For centuries, miners had carved deep quarries under Paris, leaving behind hollow spaces like forgotten rooms. These tunnels were old, empty, and most importantly, out of sight. In 1786, the decision was made. The dead would be moved. All of them. From overflowing cemeteries into the abandoned quarries below the city. It sounds simple when said quickly. It was not. The transfers happened at night. Always at night. Wagons rolled slowly through dark streets, covered in black cloth, carrying bones, skulls, and fragments of lives that once laughed, cried, worked, and complained about the weather just like everyone else. Torches flickered. Shadows stretched long and thin against stone walls. The city above tried to sleep, pretending not to notice what was passing through its veins. There were ceremonies. This was not a careless dump. Priests walked alongside the wagons, murmuring prayers. Bells rang softly. Holy water was sprinkled. The dead were honored, even as they were relocated like furniture in a crowded apartment. Paris believed in ritual, especially when guilt was involved. Down below, workers stacked bones carefully, skulls placed facing outward, like they were watching. Femurs lined up like shelves. Order was created from chaos, because humans feel better when death looks organized. Plaques were added. Dates. Cemetery names. Little labels to say, you came from here. You mattered. The catacombs became an ossuary. A word that sounds gentler than what it really means. A house of bones. Millions of them. Paris was slowly hollowing itself out and filling the space with its dead. Above ground, life continued. Markets opened. Lovers met. Revolutions brewed. Below ground, silence settled in layers. The air changed, cooler, still, heavy with time. The tunnels were no longer just stone. They were memory. They were grief packed tight and pushed underground so the city could breathe again. And it worked. The smell faded. Disease slowed. Paris survived. The dead did their final service by staying quiet. Over time, the catacombs became official. Inspected. Reinforced. Maps were drawn, though never complete. The underground remained confusing on purpose. You don't want people wandering too freely among the bones of millions. Still, curiosity leaked in. Artists, philosophers, rebels. People have always been drawn to places where rules soften and history feels close enough to touch. The catacombs were all of that, just hidden under polite shoes and busy streets. Most Parisians never went down there. They didn't need to. Knowing it existed was enough. Like knowing storms happen somewhere else. But the catacombs waited. They stretched and twisted far beyond the neat ossuary walls tourists would one day visit. Miles of tunnels remained raw, unlit, unblessed. Spaces where no prayers echoed and no plaques explained anything. And that is important. Because while the catacombs were created to manage death, they also created something else. Room. Room for silence. Room for forgetting. Room for someone to disappear. The city above kept growing. The city below stayed the same. Bones do not ask for renovations. Paris learned to live with death beneath its feet. It learned to walk lightly without really trying. Children were born over mass graves and played hopscotch without knowing why the ground felt cool even in summer. Time passed. Generations passed. The catacombs became less of an emergency and more of a secret. Quiet one. And secrets have a way of attracting people who want to step out of the noise. People who feel crowded above ground. People who want to stop being seen. The catacombs were never meant for the living. That rule was never written, but everyone understood it. Everyone except one man. But we are not there yet. For now, imagine Paris in the 18th century. Candlelight, horse hoofs, night wagons rolling slowly through narrow streets, carrying centuries of memory wrapped in black cloth. Priests whispering words meant to soothe both the dead and the living. Workers sweating underground, stacking bones in careful rows, building walls out of what once held faces. Imagine a city learning how to survive its own past. The catacombs were born not from curiosity, but from necessity, from fear of disease, from overcrowding, from the simple human truth that death does not stop just because space runs out. Paris buried its problem deep, and in doing so, it created a place that would one day invite a very different kind of story. A story not about death, but about someone who chose to live where the dead were supposed to stay quiet. Rest here for a moment. Let the rhythm settle. The city above is still breathing. The bones below are stacked and still. Next, we go deeper. If you ask Paris how big the catacombs are, Paris will shrug. Not because it is rude, because it honestly does not know. There are maps, of course. Official ones. Careful ones. The kind with clean lines and labels that say things like, "Do not enter an inaccessible area." These maps are polite. They smile. They lie a little. The truth is bigger. Much bigger. Beneath Paris runs a maze of tunnels stretching over 300 kilometers. Maybe more. Some say less. Some say much more. That's the thing about the catacombs. Numbers feel soft down there. They bend. The tunnels twist. They split. They reconnect in places that make no sense. Some are wide enough to walk comfortably. Others force you to turn sideways and apologize to the walls as you pass. And many of them are not on any map. Not because they were forgotten, but because they never wanted to be found. Over time, parts of the catacombs collapsed. Others were sealed. Some were flooded. New walls were built. Old markers faded. Paint peeled. Signs fell. A tunnel that once led somewhere now leads nowhere, or somewhere else entirely. The catacombs change slowly, like a thing that is alive but not in a hurry. This is where the mystery begins. Because humans do not like unfinished maps. There is a special kind of person who sees a blank space and thinks, "I should go there." Paris has always had many of those people. Artists, rebels, night thinkers, people who feel more awake when the rest of the world is quiet. They call themselves cataphiles. Not officially. There is no membership card. No welcome desk underground. Just a shared curiosity and a strong dislike for locked doors. Cataphiles explore the illegal sections of the catacombs. The parts tourists never see. The parts the city pretends do not exist. They slip in through hidden entrances. Old manholes, cracked walls and basements. Maintenance tunnels no one checks anymore. Once inside, the city disappears. Phones lose signal. GPS gives up. Compasses spin like they are confused or offended. Down there, directions are suggestions at best. People mark walls to keep track. Arrows, names, dates. Sometimes jokes. Sometimes warnings. Sometimes messages meant for no one in particular. But markings fade. Chalk washes away. Paint flakes. Someone follows an arrow that once meant exit and now means good luck. There are stories. There are always stories. About tunnels that go on longer than they should. Rooms no one remembers building. Doors that appear where walls used to be. Places that feel wrong, not scary, just off. Like standing in a room where a conversation stopped when you walked in. Some stories are exaggerated. Some are not. People have gotten lost. Most find their way back. Tired, hungry, quiet, a little embarrassed. The catacombs like to teach lessons, not punish. But a few did not come back at all. Their names surface sometimes in whispers. Old police reports. Rumors passed between explorers. Someone went down. Someone never returned. No body. No answers. Just another blank space on the map. The city above moves on quickly. Cities are good at that. Down below, the tunnels keep their secrets. What makes the catacombs strange is not just their size. It's their personality. They do not feel like empty space. They feel arranged, like a puzzle that rearranges itself when no one is looking. You can walk the same route twice and swear it feels different. A corner seems sharper, a ceiling lower. A passage that once echoed now swallows sound completely. The catacombs listen. Water drips constantly. Somewhere far away, stone cracks softly, like it is stretching. Air moves through unseen paths, creating little breezes that brush your neck and make you turn around even though you know nothing is there. And then there is the silence. Not total silence. Never total. But a layered one. Thick, calm, heavy enough to sit on your shoulders. It makes you aware of yourself. Your breathing. Your steps. Your thoughts. It is very hard to feel invisible down there, even though you are completely alone. That is why some people love it. Above ground, Paris is loud. Everyone wants something. Everyone is watching. Below ground, the catacombs do not care who you are. They do not ask for names or plans. They let you exist quietly, as long as you respect the stone. The catacombs are a labyrinth, but not the kind with monsters waiting around corners. This labyrinth is patient. It does not chase you. It waits for you to make mistakes. Take one wrong turn. Miss one marker. Trust one memory too much. Suddenly, the map in your head no longer matches the tunnel in front of you. And that is when you understand something important. No one fully controls this place. Not the city. Not the police. Not the explorers. Not even the maps. The catacombs belong to themselves. They were carved by humans, filled by humans, forgotten by humans. Now they exist in a space between intention and accident. A place shaped by history, but not finished by it. This vastness, this confusion, this quiet stretching beneath Paris made something possible. It made hiding easy. Not hiding like a child behind a curtain. Hiding like a thought you stopped thinking about. If someone wanted to disappear without leaving the city, this was the perfect place. No borders to cross. No papers needed. Just a willingness to walk down and keep walking. Most people would never consider it. The dark, the cold, the bones. The idea of getting lost forever under millions of footsteps. But most people are not the ones we are talking about. Somewhere in this living labyrinth, Long before rules tightened and entrances were sealed, a man learned the tunnels, learned the turns, learned where water pooled and where it stayed dry, learned which paths led back and which led deeper. While the city above memorized his face, his name, his habits, the catacombs forgot him on purpose. Maps could not follow him. Stories could not catch him. And that is the danger and the beauty of a place no one fully knows. It can lose you, or it can keep you. As the tunnels stretch out beneath Paris, endless and unsure, remember this. Every map ends somewhere. Every plan assumes solid ground. But beneath this city, the ground is hollow, and the paths are not done changing. Sleep with that thought for a moment. The labyrinth is waiting. At first, no one noticed. That is usually how strange things begin. Not with alarms or dramatic music. Just a small detail that feels slightly out of place, like seeing a chair in the middle of a forest and thinking, "Oh, that's new." Deep in the catacombs, explorers began to notice things that did not belong to stone, bone, or accident. A candle stub, burned down evenly. Not dripped. Not rushed. Someone had let it finish. Then there was the chair. Not dragged down from above. Not broken. Not random rubble stacked into something chair-shaped. This was carved directly from the stone itself. Smooth where a person would sit. The back angled just enough to be comfortable. Whoever made it understood how bodies work. And more importantly, why they get tired. It wasn't art for tourists. It wasn't graffiti. It wasn't a prank. It was practical. Calm. Intentional. That's when people started whispering. As explorers went deeper, they found more signs. Little ones. Easy to miss if you were focused on not getting lost or bumping your head. But once you saw one, you started seeing others everywhere. Living spaces. Not rooms exactly. More like gentle clearings in a maze. Areas where the stone floor was swept clean. Where bones were moved aside with respect, not tossed. Where the air felt different, lighter somehow. Candles placed in rows. Not burned all at once. Some new. Some old. Wax clean from the floor, as if someone cared about slipping in the dark. There were shelves, carved into the wall, holding jars, tools, objects that had no business being underground for decades unless someone wanted them there. Artwork appeared too. Simple sketches scratched into stone, faces, symbols, abstract shapes that looked more like thoughts than drawings. Nothing flashy, nothing screaming, "Look at me," just quiet marks, left by a steady hand. This wasn't someone passing through. This was someone staying. Explorers began to feel watched, not in a scary way, more like acknowledged, like entering a room where someone had just stepped out for a moment. Sometimes food wrappers were found, old ones, carefully folded. Sometimes glass bottles, cleaned and reused. Nothing rotting, nothing left to decay. That part mattered. Down here, rot is fast. Moisture finds everything. Mold takes over. Rats investigate. If someone was careless, the catacombs would show it immediately. But these spaces stayed clean. Intentionally clean. People started asking the wrong questions. Is this recent? How long has this been here? Who would live like this? The better question was quieter. Why does this feel normal? The catacombs are not friendly, but they are fair. They do not tolerate chaos for long. And yet, these spaces fit. Like they had been negotiated into existence. Like someone had learned the rules of the underground and followed them closely. Some explorers try to stay longer in these areas. Resting, eating, whispering, even though no one told them to whisper. They all reported the same feeling. Calm. A strange, steady calm, as if the tunnels themselves approved of what was happening there. No sign of struggle. No signs of panic. No signs of someone slowly losing their mind underground, which honestly was the expectation. Instead, it felt domestic. There were even decorations. Bones arranged not in the official ossuary style, but in personal patterns. Not disrespectful, just thoughtful. Like someone saying, "You go here, you go there." In one place, a table. Again, carved from stone. Flat, balanced. A surface meant for eating, writing, maybe thinking too much late at night. The edges were worn smooth, like arms had rested there often. This was long-term. Weeks? No. Months? Doubtful. Years? Very possible. And here's the unsettling part. No one ever met him. No footprints leading away. No fresh candle while someone was present. No sounds of movement. Just evidence that someone had been there recently enough to care. Like a ghost who cleaned up after himself. Some explorers laughed it off. Probably a group. Probably multiple people. Probably staged. But deep down they knew. Groups leave messes. Groups argue. Groups leave different handwriting. This felt singular. Consistent. Personal. And very quiet. The catacombs began to feel less empty and more occupied. Like a library where someone else was reading, just out of sight. You don't see them, but you lower your voice anyway. There were rules, too. Unwritten ones. Certain paths felt off-limits, even without barriers. Certain rooms felt like you were intruding, not exploring. Explorers turned back not because they were scared, but because it felt rude to continue. That confused them. The underground is not known for politeness. Yet here they were, apologizing to Stone. Over time, stories formed. Passed from mouth to mouth, never written down where officials could see. A man who lived below. A man who knew the tunnels better than maps. A man who chose the catacombs instead of the city above. No names stuck. Names are hard to keep underground. But the sign stayed. The carved chair. The clean spaces. The quiet art. The order. Nothing shouted, "I am here." Everything whispered, "I belong." And that may be the strangest part of all. The catacombs were built for the dead. Maintained by the living. Avoided by most. Yet somehow, someone had turned them into a home without disturbing their nature. No fires. No damage. No chaos. Just presence. Intentional presence. Explorers left those places changed. Not frightened. Just thoughtful. Some said they slept better afterward. Some said they couldn't stop thinking about it. A few stopped going underground altogether. Because once you realize someone can live there peacefully, the catacombs stop being just a maze of tunnels. They become a choice. And choices are dangerous things. Somewhere below Paris, beyond maps and warnings, a life was unfolding quietly. Measured not in days or hours, but in candle burns and footsteps echoed only once. The city above would never notice. And maybe that was the point. Rest here. Lower your voice. Next, we will ask the question everyone avoided. Who was he? The catacombs kept their secret for a long time. Longer than anyone expected. Longer than anyone deserved, maybe. But secrets underground do not come out because someone is clever. They come out because something changes. A wall shifts. A ceiling gives in. A path closes instead of opens. This time, it was a collapse. Deep in an illegal section of the catacombs, a narrow entrance caved in after weeks of slow erosion. Nothing dramatic. No explosion. Just stone getting tired of pretending it could hold forever. When explorers reached the area later, they noticed something strange. The way was blocked. Not just partially. Completely. A tight choke of rubble and dust, packed hard. No fresh air coming through. No easy way around. It looked final, like the tunnels had made a decision. That alone would not have mattered. Blocked tunnels happen all the time. What mattered was what lay on the safe side of the collapse. A room, not large, not impressive, but unmistakably lived in. This was not one of the earlier spaces explorers had whispered about. This was deeper, quieter, more hidden. A place that felt chosen very carefully. The stone floor was clean. Swept recently. A carved bed platform sat against the wall, smooth and worn. Nearby, shelves held jars, notebooks, small tools, and things that did not belong to any official map. And then they saw it. A camera. An old film camera, resting carefully on a stone shelf. Not dusty. Not broken. Just sitting there, like it was waiting. Someone picked it up. It was heavy, solid, real, and it worked. That part still makes people pause. Down here, where moisture eats metal and darkness ruins delicate things, the camera was functional. Clean. Maintained. Loved, maybe. When the film was removed and later developed, the Catacombs changed forever. Black and white footage. Grainy. Quiet. Steady. The camera did not shake. Whoever held it knew how to keep still. Knew how to wait. The footage showed tunnels. Long walks. Familiar turns. Walls marked in ways no official map recognized. Then rooms. The carved chair. The table. The candles. Seen not as rumors, but as fact. And then a people. Tourists. Workers. Police patrols in the legal sections. Shot from a distance. Never intrusive. Never mocking. Just observed. As if the camera belonged to someone studying a different species from very far away. The most unsettling thing was not what appeared on the film. It was what did not. No voice. No reflection. No accidental shadow. The man never filmed himself. He existed only through his choices. Through where the camera went. Through what it lingered on. A pile of bones arranged neatly. A candle burning low. Water dripping into a carefully placed container. Time passed in those frames, but it moved slowly. Days, weeks, maybe years. There's no way to know. Then the footage stopped. No ending. No farewell. Just darkness. When authorities were informed, they took the discovery seriously. Not loudly. Not publicly. Quietly, like Paris prefers its uncomfortable moments. Police entered the catacombs with maps that were already outdated. They followed the route as best they could. They reached the collapsed entrance. And they could not pass. The rubble was solid. Dangerous. Any attempt to clear it risked further collapse. The catacombs, once again, had chosen silence. No body was found. No belongings left behind beyond the room. No sign of struggle. Just absence. The camera was catalogued. The room photographed. The area sealed. Official reports were written using careful words like unknown individual and no evidence of foul play. Unofficially, no one knew what to think. Had he been trapped by the collapse? Had he left before it happened? Had he known it was coming? The footage offered no answers. What remained was the quiet. Explorers who later passed near the sealed area said the tunnels felt different. Not angry. Not sad. Just the finished. Like a chapter had closed itself without asking permission. Some joked about it. Humans do that when they're uncomfortable. Guess he moved out. Rent got too high. Little laughs that echoed too much in the tunnels. But no one lingered. The catacombs do not like crowds around their secrets. The camera footage was never officially released in full. Small clips surfaced. Blurry stills. Enough to confirm the story, not enough to explain it. And that might be the most honest ending possible. A man lived beneath Paris. He built a home in silence. He watched the world without touching it. And then he was gone. No dramatic chase. No final message. No answers neatly stacked like bones. Just a room, a camera, and a blocked path. Paris above kept breathing. Traffic flowed. Coffee was poured. Lovers argued. No one felt the moment the underground became empty again. But the catacombs noticed. They always do. Rest here for a moment. Let the stillness settle. The footage has ended. The room is sealed. The quiet has returned to its place. Next, we will ask the question no one could avoid after that day. Why would someone choose this life? And what does it say about the world he left behind? If you stripped away the location, if you forgot for just a moment where you were, the space would feel cozy. That sounds wrong. It probably should. But stay with me. Deep beneath Paris, past warning signs and forgotten turns, the home did not announce itself. No doorbell. No welcome sign. Just a soft change in feeling. The air steadied. The floor cleared. The chaos of tunnels relaxed into something intentional. This was not a cave someone crashed into. This was a place someone prepared. The bed came first. Or at least, that's how it feels when you see it. A raised stone platform carved directly from the wall, wide enough to stretch out, smooth enough to sleep without regretting your life choices. A mattress lay on top, Thin, worn, carefully kept dry. Blankets folded neatly, like they were meant to be used again tomorrow. That detail mattered. People passing through do not make beds. Next to it, a table. Solid, balanced, level in a way that takes patience underground. On it sat books. Real ones. Paper softened by time, but protected from damp. Philosophy, history, a few novels. The kind of books you read slowly, not to escape, but to think alongside. Someone had taste. Wine bottles rested nearby. Empty, cleaned, reused for water storage. A few still sealed, save for reasons no one could guess. Celebration, maybe. Or just comfort. Even underground, a good bottle waits for the right moment. There was electricity. That part always surprises people. Not bright lights. Nothing harsh. Just a soft system. Carefully run cables. A small generator tucked away where sound would travel least. Power enough for a lamp. For the camera. For moments when candles felt like too much work. And ventilation. This wasn't reckless living. Air was guided through shafts and cracks. Slow circulation. Enough to breathe without panic. Enough to live without rushing. This was long-term planning. Someone had walked these tunnels for years before deciding where to settle. They knew which areas flooded in spring, which walls sweated too much, which ceilings complained when the city above shifted in its sleep. They chose well. Candles lined the walls, dozens of them. Some burned low, some untouched. Their light reflected off skulls stacked neatly nearby, giving them a soft glow. Not spooky, not dramatic, just warm. The skulls did not feel like decorations. They felt like neighbors, arranged respectfully, never handled roughly, never used as furniture or jokes. Whoever lived here understood the weight of sharing space with the dead, and the dead, in return, stayed quiet. There was humor too, in small ways. A bottle balanced on a femur like a lazy joke no one else would ever see. A carved notch in the wall marking time, not days, but something slower. Maybe months. Maybe winters. Signs of routine were everywhere. Tools hung where hands could find them without looking. Food stored carefully. Nothing spoiled. Nothing wasted. Even trash had its place, wrapped and moved away, like the idea of rot was personally offensive. This was not survival. This was living. The strangest part was how calm it felt. You expect tension underground. A sense of wrongness. A voice in your head saying, you should not be here. But in this space, that voice softened. Like it had been invited to sit down and relax. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Bones everywhere. Comfort everywhere. Death stacked into walls, holding up a life built gently inside it. The catacombs are cold, but this place held warmth. Not heat exactly. Something quieter. The warmth of intention, of care, of someone who took the time to make their surroundings kinder. That is what humanizes a space. Not furniture. Not electricity. Care. The books had been read more than once. You could tell by the spines, by the notes scribbled softly in margins. Questions written, not answers. This was a man still thinking, still curious, still alive in ways that had nothing to do with sunlight. There were maps too. Hand-drawn, not complete, not neat, just personal. Notes like drips here, safe, do not sleep, and one simply, listen. He had built a relationship with the catacombs. He respected them, learned from them, adjusted when they pushed back. This was not a battle between man and underground. It was a quiet agreement. You give me space, I will give you peace. And the catacombs surprisingly agreed. You can see it in the way nothing is forced. No nails driven where stone didn't want them. No smoke stains where air wouldn't carry it away. Everything fit because it asked first. That's rare above ground. Up there, cities push. They expand. They argue with gravity and history in each other. Down here, this home listened instead. And the bones? They didn't mind. In fact, the presence of death made the comfort feel sharper. Like a reminder, not a threat. A daily nudge that life is temporary, so it might as well be intentional. You sleep better with that kind of honesty. This was not a man hiding from death. He was living beside it, and somehow that made the space peaceful. Strangely peaceful. Not sad, not eerie, not lonely, just quiet in a way that feels earned. Standing there, you could almost imagine him returning, setting down his bag, lighting a candle, pouring a little wine, sitting at the table, listening to water drip somewhere far off, like a clock that never rushes. A life measured slowly, carefully, deliberately, and that may be the most unsettling thing of all. Because this home does not feel like desperation. It feels like a choice. Rest here a moment. Let the candlelight soften the skulls. Let the silence do its work. Next, we will step closer to the man himself. Not who he was on paper, but who he became underground. This is the part where stories usually give you a name. A folded document, a hidden passport, a dramatic reveal that ties everything together nicely. The Catacombs did none of that. When authorities searched the dwelling, they found no ID, no wallet, no letters signed at the bottom, no fingerprints on file that matched anyone above ground, no missing person report that fit cleanly. Nothing. It was as if the man had stepped out of the world and taken his name with him. That silence bothered people more than any skull-lined tunnel ever could. They try to guess his age first. Humans love numbers. They make us feel useful. Based on the bed height, the worn steps, the reach of shelves, they estimated an adult man. Not young, not elderly, somewhere in between. Strong enough to carve stone. Patient enough to do it slowly. His hands had known work. The tools told part of the story. Chisels worn smooth. Handles reshaped by use. Repairs made carefully, not rushed. These were not store-bought for a hobby tools. These were companions. Someone who works with stone, or wood, or both. Someone who understands pressure and patience. Someone who knows that forcing things only breaks them. Craftsmanship like that usually comes from years, not weekends. His lifestyle offered more clues. The books suggested education, but not arrogance. Philosophy without show-off notes. History without obsession. Novels without escapism. He wasn't trying to disappear into fantasy. He was trying to understand something. The wine suggested appreciation, not excess. No piles of empty bottles. No signs of dependency. Just presence. The kind of person who enjoys a glass, not the idea of finishing one. Food storage was practical. Balanced. Thought out. Someone who planned weeks ahead. Someone who understood scarcity, but did not fear it. This was not a man running. This was a man settling. That confused investigators. People who disappear usually leave chaos behind. Debt, broken relationships, sudden endings. This man left nothing. No trail, no noise, no panic. It was like he faded sideways. Theory started quietly. A former worker, a quarryman's descendant, a disgraced academic, a veteran tired of crowds and clocks. Each theory made sense for a moment, then slipped apart. Why no records? Why no mistakes? Why no longing back to the surface? The camera complicated things further. He filmed people, but never interacted. He stayed distant, but curious. Observing without judgment. Not hiding, exactly. Just choosing not to engage. That suggests comfort with solitude. Not bitterness. Not fear. Comfort. That kind of comfort doesn't come from isolation alone. It comes from intention. The craftsmanship supported that. The way furniture fit the stone. The way airflow was managed. The way water was collected without flooding the space. He had learned this place. Not quickly. Not accidentally. Which means he spent years underground before living there full-time. Years moving between worlds. Testing. Listening. Adjusting. That kind of transition is rare. Most people escape loudly. This man left quietly. Some suggested he was homeless. That idea didn't last long. Homelessness leaves marks. Desperation. Inconsistency. This space was too deliberate. Too cared for. Others suggested mental illness. Another easy answer. Another weak one. There was no disorder here. No erratic behavior. No obsession spiraling out of control. Everything pointed to stability, calm routines, thoughtful choices. If anything, this was someone who had simplified life until it made sense again. And that unsettled people. Because it meant the catacombs weren't a last resort. They were a preference. No fingerprints meant gloves, or careful cleaning, or simply never being processed by the system. That last option made officials uncomfortable. It suggested a man who lived fully without leaving a bureaucratic shadow. No documents meant he planned that. IDs are easy to lose by accident. All of them disappearing takes effort. Names matter above ground. Below ground, they don't do much. The absence of personal photos was telling too. No faces. No memories captured. The camera never turned inward. This man was not interested in recording himself. He already knew who he was. That kind of self-knowledge is rare, and a little dangerous. Investigators eventually stopped trying to identify him as a person and started thinking of him as a presence. Someone who existed in relation to the catacombs, not society. A caretaker, almost. The way he arranged bones respectfully. The way he avoided disturbing certain areas. The way he documented changes in the tunnels like a long-term resident noticing cracks in the ceiling. He wasn't conquering the underground. He was coexisting, and that reframed everything. Maybe he wasn't hiding from the world. Maybe he was opting out. Above ground, life moves fast. Too fast. Time is sliced into minutes, deadlines, alerts, obligations. Underground, time stretches. It breathes. It waits. Perhaps this man simply preferred that rhythm. No boss. No audience. No constant explanation. Just stone, silence, and the slow work of living deliberately. That idea made people uneasy because it felt possible. Not easy. Not romantic. But possible. And if one person could do it quietly for years, maybe others had thought about it too. Maybe that's why his name never surfaced. Not because it was hidden, but because it stopped being useful. He was not someone above ground who lived below. He became someone below. The catacombs did not erase him. They absorbed him. And that leaves us with the hardest truth. Sometimes the question, who was he, has no satisfying answer. Not because we failed to look hard enough, but because identity itself can be shed, like a coat left behind, like a name that no longer fits. Rest with that thought for a moment. Next, we will ask a more uncomfortable question. Why did he leave the world above? And what was he escaping from? People hear darkness and think of fear. They imagine running, panic, a bad ending. But darkness can mean something else too. It can mean quiet. It can mean distance. It can mean finally being left alone by a world that never stops tapping you on the shoulder. The man in the catacombs was not pushed underground. That much feels clear. There were no chains, no signs of exile, no story of someone chased out of the city with nothing but a flashlight and a bad mood. Everything about his space says choice. Careful choice. There is a big difference between being alone and choosing solitude. One hurts, the other heals. And this man seemed to understand that difference very well. Humans have done this before. Long before Paris had traffic and deadlines, there were hermits. People who walked away from villages, cities, even families, to live apart. Some went into deserts, some into forests, some into mountains. Not because they hated people, but because they wanted to hear something else. Silence. God. Themselves. The man underground fits into that long tradition, just with worse lighting and better stonework. Modern life is loud, not just with sound, but with expectation. Be available. Be productive. Be seen. Be online. Even rest has rules now. Even quiet comes with notifications. Urban loneliness is strange like that. You can be surrounded by millions and still feel completely unseen. Or worse, constantly watched but never understood. Paris is beautiful, but it is not gentle. Crowds press. Time rushes. Rent rises. Noise never fully leaves. The city asks things from you every day, and it rarely says thank you. Maybe the man felt that weight. Maybe he didn't want to compete anymore, or explain himself, or keep up with a life that felt like it was always slightly behind. So he didn't run away. He stepped aside. The catacombs offered something modern cities do not. No audience, no performance, no comparison, no endless measuring of worth. Down there, you do not matter in the usual ways. You matter only to yourself and to the space you occupy. If you respect it, it lets you stay. If you don't, it reminds you who is older. That kind of relationship is honest. Voluntary solitude strips things down. There is no one to impress, no one to argue with, no one to blame. If you are bored, it is your fault. If you are peaceful, you earned it. The man did not fill his home with distractions. No music system blasting. No clutter. No attempt to recreate the city underground. He didn't bring Paris with him. He left it behind. That suggests something deeper than escape. It suggests rejection. Not angry rejection. Not dramatic. Just a quiet decision that this way of living no longer fit. Rejection of speed. Rejection of noise. Rejection of being constantly pulled outward. And here's the uncomfortable part. That choice makes sense. More sense than people like to admit. Many of us dream about disappearing. Not dying. Just disappearing for a while. Turning the volume down. Living smaller. Simpler. Slower. We joke about it. I'll move to a cabin. I'll quit everything. I'll go off-grid. We laugh, then check our phones again. He didn't laugh. He planned. This wasn't exile. Exile is bitter. This was withdrawal. Calm. Thoughtful. Almost kind. And it wasn't total isolation either. He watched people. Filmed them. Studied life from a distance. He stayed connected, just not entangled. That's an important difference. He didn't hate humanity. He just didn't want to live inside its noise. Philosophically, this is old ground. Thinkers have always questioned how much society a person actually needs. Some argue meaning comes from community. Others say it comes from reflection. The man underground seemed to vote for reflection. Down there, time slows. A candle burns. Water drips. Stone waits. You are not rushed. You are not late. You are just present. That can be terrifying. It can also be freeing. Without schedules and mirrors and constant feedback, you are left with yourself, your thoughts, your habits, your fears, your patience. There is nowhere to hide from them, unless you are ready. The careful order of his home suggests he was. He wasn't numbing himself. He wasn't distracting himself. He was engaging with the day as it came. Reading, working, eating slowly, sleeping deeply. That's not darkness. That's clarity. The darkness was just the setting. And maybe that's why the catacombs accepted him. They are not evil. They are neutral. They amplify what you bring down with you. Panic gets louder. Calm settles in. He brought calm. So the tunnels stayed quiet. Of course, this life is not for everyone. Most people would last a few hours before missing sunlight, coffee shops, or just the sound of other humans existing nearby. And that's okay. Choosing darkness does not make him better. It makes him different. But his story lingers because it presses on a question we avoid. What if the life we're all chasing isn't the only way to live? What if stepping back is not failure, but clarity? The man in the catacombs didn't preach. He didn't write manifestos. He didn't ask anyone to follow him underground. He just lived his answer. Quietly, deliberately, in the dark. Rest with that for a moment. Next, we'll explore the time he spent down there. Not as a mystery, but as a life lived slowly, one candle at a time. Life underground changes everything. Not all at once, but slowly. Your body notices first. Your mind follows. Time becomes soft. Days blur into nights that don't exist. The man in the catacombs didn't need sunlight. Or at least, he learned not to. Candlelight became his clock. Not a bright, harsh clock, but a gentle one. He could tell the hour by how the wax dripped, by how the flame danced, by the length of shadows crawling across carved stone. It was a rhythm that replaced the sun, subtle but steady. Wake with the wax pool, eat when the flame flickered low, sleep when the last stub burned out. His meals were simple but practical. He stored dry food carefully, rotated supplies, sometimes carried water in jars scavenged or cleaned from the tunnels. Wine bottles, cleaned and reused, served both as comfort and hydration. There was no rush, no lunchtime announcements, no pressure to eat with anyone else. Eating became an act of quiet intention. Each bite measured, each sip appreciated. Sleeping was similar. The bed carved from stone and softened with blankets was no luxury, but it was enough. Enough to rest, enough to dream. He didn't need daylight to tell him when to wake. He woke to the soft dripping of water somewhere deep in the tunnels, or the subtle chill shifting in the air. The body adjusts. The mind adjusts. Humans are more flexible than they give themselves credit for. Silence was a constant companion. Not oppressive, not scary, just present. A reminder that the world above, with all its noise and demands, was somewhere else entirely. Some people might find that unbearable. Most would, but he had learned to live alongside it, to let the quiet become part of his daily rhythm. Candlelit evenings offered a soft hum of peace. The occasional scurry of a rat, the drip of water, or the creak of stone overhead were all he needed to feel alive. Time lost its usual shape down there. Without the sun marking hours, days stretched or shrank depending on attention. Sometimes a morning could feel like a week. Sometimes an evening could slip by in what seemed like minutes. The man measured life differently. By candles, by the order of books, by the care he put into his environment. Routine was no longer a set of obligations. It was a practice, meditative and grounding. He adapted physically as well. Hands became steady from carving and maintaining his surroundings. Eyes adjusted to low light, learning to catch shapes and movement without a direct source. The body learned the rhythms of underground living, when to rest, when to move, how to preserve energy, and how to remain alert in spaces that could shift unexpectedly. Hunger became predictable. Sleep deepened. Even the breathing of the tunnels, which might have disturbed someone unaccustomed, became soothing. Candles marked more than time. They marked moments. A stub burned low in the morning meant work. A flicker in the evening meant reflection. Wax pools on shelves or tables served as subtle reminders of presence and continuity. The man didn't track days on a calendar. The wax tracked them for him. And it never lied. Mental endurance mattered most. Without social interaction, without sunlight, without the usual distractions, the mind can turn sharply inward. Some people would collapse into fear or restlessness. He did not. He learned to observe himself. Thoughts became objects. Emotions became tools. Decisions became measured. Without society pressing him from all sides, he could finally see his own patterns clearly. Even boredom took on a new shape. Not a painful emptiness, but a kind of spaciousness. Time became a canvas for small tasks: cleaning, organizing, cataloging, sharpening tools, arranging books, watching shadows play on skulls stacked along the walls. Each action was deliberate. Each small rhythm mattered. The catacombs themselves seemed to cooperate. The stone absorbed sound, filtered air, and kept him sheltered. Temperature stayed steady enough to avoid extremes. The space offered consistency in a way that a chaotic city above could never provide. It was a house built of patience, of stone, of respect for both the dead and the living who chose to live among them. Candlelight, silence, and careful work created a meditation of existence. He learned how to live entirely within himself, without distraction, without apology. The tunnels taught him to measure life by what mattered to him alone. The body adapted. The mind adapted. And together, they built a routine that was both simple and profound. Even small comforts became meaningful. A warm blanket, a well-balanced meal, a glass of wine at the end of a day measured by candlelight. Each one reinforced that life could be slow, deliberate, and satisfying, even without sunlight or the hum of the city above. In this underground life, patience became a skill. Observation became a necessity. Care became an art form. And in every shadow, in every drip of water, in every flickering flame, the man found a rhythm that no one else could give him. Life without sun is not dark. It is different. It asks for attention. It rewards consistency. It teaches you to notice the small things, the warmth of wax, the gentle slope of stone, the comfort of a bed made carefully. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches presence. Being fully where you are, even when that place is beneath a city of millions, beneath centuries of history, beneath the weight of bones and silence. The man learned to live in that presence, to breathe with it, to measure his days not in minutes, but in moments, in candle stubs, in drips of water, in the quiet acknowledgement of the catacombs themselves. Rest here a moment. Feel the slow rhythm. Let the silence wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let the candles flicker in your mind's eye. Next, we will see how he mastered not just survival, but a life of subtle mastery, living in harmony with the underground world around him. Living underground is not just about survival. It's about finding ways to remain human, to think, to feel, to create. The man in the catacombs understood that deeply. He brought books. Real books, not digital distractions. Philosophy, literature, history, novels that spoke of other worlds, not to escape his own, but to expand it. He read slowly, sometimes out loud, so his voice echoed gently against stone, sometimes silently, letting ideas settle in the quiet corners of his mind. Pages turned carefully, preserving their edges. Reading became ritual, not pastime. But he didn't stop with books. He had films. A small projector set up on a carved stone shelf, a makeshift screen against the wall. Black and white films, mostly classics. Metropolis, La Regla du Jeu, occasionally Casablanca, though watching romance underground has a peculiar twist. There were no popcorn machines, no chatter, no harsh light from screens. Just him, the flickering images, and the soft, steady drip of water somewhere distant. Cinema underground was different. Without sunlight, without clocks, each scene stretched. Shadows became deeper. Music became more intimate. The laughter and sadness on screen echoed in ways impossible above ground. The world outside could wait. The catacombs were his theater. He curated the experience. Every film choice was deliberate. He knew which scenes to pause, which frames to let linger. Time slowed. Life expanded. Music was quieter. A small phonograph. Records rotated. Chopin, Debussy, occasionally jazz if he wanted liveliness. Not for entertainment alone. Music became companion, teacher, and reminder of beauty beyond stone. Each note seemed larger underground, stretched by the emptiness. Silence and sound worked together. One accentuated the other. Candlelight flickered in rhythm with piano keys and saxophone phrases. Art was everywhere, even in minimal form. Sketches on stone walls, careful markings and margins of books, small carvings, simple shapes that made the eyes linger. Nothing flashy, nothing meant for anyone else. Art was his survival, a way to assert presence, to shape the underground space, not violently, but gently. A reminder that life was not only about breathing. It was also about understanding, about expressing, about connecting, even if only with oneself. He had routines, reading before meals, films after dinner, music in the quietest hours, just before sleep. Art one never thought wandered too far. These activities were not chores. They were the scaffolding of sanity. They kept the underground from becoming oppressive. They reminded him that he was alive in ways that could be felt and measured, not just survived. The projector required care. Film reels were delicate. Each needed cleaning, alignment, attention. Lights needed adjusting. Sound needed balancing. These tasks demanded patience and skill. They were also meditative. Each adjustment became a rhythm, a quiet ceremony. Mistakes were punished by broken frames or ruined sound. But that, too, was part of the lesson. Precision mattered. Presence mattered. Film titles were carefully chosen, not a random collection. Less on fondue parody, La Grande Illusion, Nosferatu, each brought insight. Each explored humanity, love, fear, morality, society, conflict. The catacombs provided the perfect context to consider these things in isolation. The world above could not interrupt. The city's chaos was distant, softened by layers of stone. Reading habits were equally intentional. He did not speed through texts. He paused, underlined mentally, not physically, unless a mark in pencil was necessary for a later thought. Margins were not cluttered. Ideas were allowed space to breathe. Sometimes he read the same passage twice in a row, letting it sink in differently the second time. Ideas developed slowly, deliberately, without the usual distractions of phones, noise, or obligation. Music, books, film, and art were not decoration. They were sustenance. His brain needed them as much as his body needed water and bread. To live underground is to strip away layers of modern life. What remains is essential: thought, feeling, understanding. Art feeds that. Music feeds that. Stories feed that. Without them, the darkness is only cold. With them, it becomes a home. Occasionally, he experimented, combining music and film, or sketching while a record played in the background. He created subtle atmospheres, layers of experience that were private, yet expansive. Each day, a new combination, a new rhythm. Nothing repetitive, nothing forced, everything intentional. The catacombs absorbed it all. Shadows flickered on walls. Echoes carried the soft scratch of pencil, the hum of phonograph, the faint drip of water. Silence held these activities in a quiet frame. Nothing outside interfered. Nothing above could intrude. It was a private world, cultivated patiently, lovingly. And in that cultivation, there was beauty. Quiet, understated, internal. No one saw it but him, and perhaps, through film reels or traces left behind, the occasional explorer. That did not matter. Art and thought need not be public to exist. They only need space. They only need intention. Living this way, he transformed darkness. From fear or emptiness, it became a canvas, a library, a theater. Every candlelit corner held possibility. Every shadow became a backdrop. Every wall became a page for sketch or note. The catacombs, already alive with history and bones, became a living gallery of one human life unfolding deliberately, thoughtfully, beautifully. Rest here for a moment. Let the projector light flicker in your mind. Hear Chopin in the distance. Let the pages of imagined books turn softly under your fingertips. Notice how the darkness, once threatening, now holds form and meaning. Next, we will explore how, after decades of quiet work and subtle mastery, he began leaving traces that would intrigue the world above, traces no one could fully ignore. Walking among the bones changes you. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly, in ways you notice only when you pause. The catacombs are not just tunnels and skulls. They are a meditation on life, a place where the dead surround you, not threateningly, but constantly, calmly, like old friends reminding you of what matters. For the man who lived there, this became more than home. It became spiritual. Bones stacked in careful order. Skulls aligned with respect. Not random piles or macabre decoration. Every arrangement suggested intention, a recognition of mortality without fear. This was a life lived in close dialogue with death. Candlelight flickered across skulls and femurs. Shadows danced, soft and deliberate. He would sit among them, not in terror, but in contemplation. Some bones became markers, some just companions. Occasionally, a small carving on a wall suggested symbols, crosses, circles, simple lines that could have religious meaning or just personal meditation. Interpretation was left to the observer. Religion above ground often comes with noise, ritual, and public display. Underground, it was quieter. No one to impress. No altar to worship for show. He did not preach. He did not perform. He simply existed among reminders of mortality and let that awareness shape his days. Meditation in the catacombs was literal and figurative. Sitting in a carved chair, candlelight soft, bones around him, he could trace a line of thought as easily as tracing a mark on stone. Thoughts of life, impermanence, regret, hope, all became sharper in the stillness. Silence amplifies reflection. Shadows sharpen memory. The flickering flame reminds you that nothing lasts forever. And yet, even as mortality pressed in, comfort pressed back. The place held him. He could breathe. He could think. He could exist fully. Historical and religious symbolism wove naturally into the space. Many skulls still carried faint markings from centuries ago. Occasional crosses etched into bone by long-dead hands, small inscriptions from anonymous souls long forgotten. He treated these signs as sacred. He did not rearrange them carelessly. He added nothing that would clash with the quiet history. Respect was key. Reverence for life and death intertwined. Living among the dead changes perspective. You notice time differently. You notice yourself differently. Life above ground feels urgent. Bills, traffic, obligations. Below, with skulls as your companions, urgency fades. You measure days not in deadlines, but in small rituals. A candle burned, a page turned, a film watched, a meal eaten. Each act becomes prayer, offering, meditation. The boundaries between routine and ritual blur. Even humor, subtle as it was, became spiritual. A tiny note scratched into stone, a playful arrangement of a femur and bottle, reminded him that life does not stop at death. It teaches you to see lightly, even among shadows. Joy is not lost in the presence of mortality. It exists quietly, tucked into intention and observation. Death as a constant presence reshapes choices. You become deliberate. You conserve energy, attention, and focus on what matters. In the catacombs, nothing wasted survives. Every object, every candle, every piece of stone carries significance. Living here encourages acceptance. Mortality is visible, unavoidable. But it is not threatening. It is grounding. Some skulls, polished slightly by centuries of passing hands, seem almost luminous in candlelight. Some walls bear carvings reminiscent of spiritual texts. Occasionally, a faint inscription suggests a prayer or thought left by the original quarry workers or early caretakers. For him, these became companions in dialogue. Not voices, but presences. You do not need sound to feel connection. Presence suffices. Meditation among bones is not silent boredom. It is active engagement with existence. Every step, every adjustment of a candle, every rotation of a book, every note in the margin of a text becomes a conscious choice. This is spirituality as action, as mindfulness. The space teaches patience and humility. You cannot force it. You cannot rush it. You adapt or you fail. This daily interaction with mortality inspired reflection on life above ground. He considered human attachment to objects, to routines, to status. The catacombs showed that living intentionally requires focus, simplicity, and respect for life and for death. He measured himself against this truth. Every choice became small meditation. Every object a guidepost. Even silence carries lessons here. The absence of city noise, the absence of outside distraction, creates space for listening. Not only to thoughts, but to stone, air, and shadows. The dripping of water is a metronome. The faint shifting of rubble is a reminder that nothing is permanent. The catacombs themselves become a teacher, demanding patience and observation. Visitors to his space, if ever they glimpsed it, would feel not horror but calm. Bones are not meant to frighten here. They are witnesses, students of life. They remind you that everything ends, but everything also matters in the moment. Presence is sacred. Intentional living is sacred. Even darkness can be sacred. The man did not seek enlightenment, but he found it. Not as a moment of revelation, but as continuous recognition. Each day, each candle burned, each meal eaten, each book read, was acknowledgement of the cycle of life and death. He accepted mortality without despair. He celebrated existence without excess. He lived deliberately, in rhythm with history, stone, and shadow. In that quiet, reverent life, humor, thought, art, and discipline intertwined seamlessly. Spirituality became practical. Presence became meditation. Silence became companion. Mortality became teacher. Rest for a moment. Imagine the candlelight flickering over rows of skulls. Feel the stillness. Listen to the quiet rhythm of the catacombs. Sense life unfolding gently, thoughtfully, respectfully among centuries of the past. Next, we will see how he left a subtle mark on the world above, a legacy that no one could ignore, even if they never fully understood it. The catacombs keep secrets, some of them forever, some only until someone knows where to look. And this man, maybe he wanted to be found, or maybe not. That's the thing about choices made underground. Intention is impossible to prove. You can only read the space, the objects, the trails left behind, and wonder. The camera was the first clue. Carefully placed, not hidden too well, not left openly. On a carved stone shelf, in a room only a patient, careful explorer could reach. Positioned to capture tunnels, rooms, objects, but never himself. Always observing, always silent. Breadcrumbs. That's one way to think about it. Objects left in order, rooms arranged deliberately, walls marked subtly. He could have made everything disappear. But he didn't. He left a trail, just faint enough to be noticed if someone knew what to look for. Collapsing entrances added to the question. One area sealed itself naturally, the rubble making access impossible without effort, without intent. Did he anticipate it? Or was it luck, nature, slow decay? No one can tell. The catacombs themselves decide what survives and what doesn't. But it feels deliberate, especially when paired with the carefully arranged living spaces. Rooms he left intact, tools perfectly stored, candles unburned for months. These were gestures. Invitations, maybe. Warnings, maybe. The man did not need anyone. Yet he structured his world as if someone might arrive. Not to interrupt him. Not to judge him. Just to see. To witness. Even the camera's perspective matters. It captures life in motion, the way objects shift, the way shadows fall. Yet no human presence shows himself. A man who wants to vanish entirely leaves nothing. A man who hopes to be seen leaves traces. And traces, small as they were, existed here. The tunnels were dangerous, confusing. Maps outdated almost immediately. Some passages collapsed naturally. Some were too narrow, too dark, too winding. He knew that. He chose paths with care. Only the patient, only the observant could reach certain rooms. And even then, the path was not easy. This makes one question. Did he want casual discovery? Or only the persistent, the dedicated, the respectful? Final choices matter here. He did not broadcast his existence. He did not leave a note saying, "Hello world." But he also did not erase himself completely. A projector. Books arranged neatly. Candles that could be lit. Objects maintained. Tools sharpened. Evidence of life preserved in silence. You start to wonder if he played a quiet game. If someone above ground stumbled down, would they see a man? Or just the remnants of one? Would they be satisfied with fragments, with signs? Or would the absence itself be the point? Perhaps he understood discovery as a story, not a fact. Discovery is less about proof and more about perception. Those who find him find a narrative, a life interpreted through objects, light and shadow. The man is there or he is not. That uncertainty is the essence of the experience. Soft suspense fills the tunnels. You cannot help but imagine the choices he made. Did he collapse the entrance intentionally to test patience? Did he leave the camera as a guide? Did he hope someone would see the care in the bones, the order in chaos, the life in shadow? The catacombs are patient teachers. They allow glimpses. They reveal slowly. And in this, his intention or lack of it becomes part of the story. Every detail preserved feels deliberate. Every shadow cast, every book opened just enough, every candle stub carefully burned, gestures. One can imagine him walking the tunnels, checking light, adjusting an object, pausing at a doorway, knowing that someday someone might notice. Or maybe he did not care at all. That is the beauty of voluntary disappearance. You never know what the vanished truly want. The collapsed passages amplify this question. Some were natural. Some could have been set to fall with careful timing. Paths blocked, walls altered, entrances erased. All leave the impression of decision, of control, of finality. But control is never complete underground. Stone has its say. Water has its say. Gravity has its say. So what remained, intentionally or not, is all the more striking. Ultimately, it is impossible to know. We can see the evidence. We can wonder about the intentions. We can trace breadcrumbs, follow shadows, observe the camera angles. But the truth may never be revealed. And maybe that is the point. The man who lived in the catacombs created a life that balanced presence and absence, visibility and invisibility, silence and trace, discovery and mystery. He chose darkness, and in it he left questions. Did he want to be found? Perhaps. Perhaps not. Perhaps he only wanted the space to exist as he did, and whatever emerged above ground was incidental. Or perhaps he enjoyed the thought that someone patient, careful, respectful might eventually find the life he built so deliberately. Soft suspense lingers in the tunnels, echoing in the drip of water, in the flicker of candlelight, in the empty shelves and rooms that once hummed with quiet life. We may never know. And yet, we continue to follow the breadcrumbs, wondering, imagining, and listening to the silence he left behind. Rest here for a moment. Feel the weight of choices, the patience of stone, the deliberate absence of a man who lived among the dead but still left signs for the living. Next, we will step back and reflect on the lessons of a life lived in shadow, what it teaches about freedom, presence, and the quiet mastery of one's own world. When you stand in the quiet of the catacombs, it's easy to let your mind wander, to fill the shadows with stories. And naturally, people do. About the man, about his choices, about why he vanished beneath the city. Speculation is tricky. It can wander into sensationalism if you're not careful. But here, we try to be gentle, thoughtful, and respectful. Because whatever he was, he left his life quietly, deliberately. There's no need to exaggerate. The space speaks softly for itself. One popular theory is that he was an artist. And it makes sense. Look at the care in his living space. Placement of objects. The arrangement of bones, the subtle carvings on walls, the way candlelight falls across every corner. An artist sees the world differently. The catacombs could have been a canvas, a gallery, a studio. His films, his books, even his small sketches suggest someone who valued aesthetics and intention. The quiet, deliberate choices of daily life become a kind of art when observed carefully. Living underground was perhaps his medium, and he created beauty out of isolation. Another theory is that he was a fugitive. This one sounds dramatic, but it has its merits. Above ground, life can be complicated. Sometimes, people leave to avoid the mess of society. He had no documents, no fingerprints, no paper trail. He moved carefully, avoided leaving obvious evidence. Collapsed passages, hidden rooms. These could all be interpreted as measures to remain unseen. Perhaps there was something he wanted to escape, though it might not have been a crime. Maybe it was chaos. Maybe it was obligations. Perhaps he simply needed a space where the world above could not reach him. A fugitive from expectation, rather than law. Then there is the philosopher-hermit theory. This one feels the most fitting, given the life he constructed. Thinkers have long sought solitude to understand themselves, life, and mortality. The catacombs offered silence, reflection, and a direct confrontation with death. Candlelight replacing the sun, bones as companions, deliberate routines. These are not signs of desperation. They are signs of contemplation. Of a person choosing a life designed to study existence, observe, and reflect. Not hiding from the world in fear, but stepping aside in order to see it clearly. All of these theories are possible. None of them can be confirmed. The evidence supports parts of each, but never fully. And that is perhaps the most fascinating aspect of his story. We can only observe what he left behind. Spaces carefully maintained, objects thoughtfully placed, traces of life without the person who made them. It is a puzzle without a clear solution, and maybe that was intentional. Some suggest a mix of all three. An artist who was a philosopher. A hermit who needed escape. Someone who lived deliberately in darkness, creating beauty, structure, and reflection simultaneously. That idea feels plausible. The sophistication of the living space, the careful planning, and the balance between comfort and contemplation suggest a multifaceted life. He was not easily reduced to a single label. We must avoid romanticizing. The catacombs are dangerous, disorienting, and cold. Living there required skill, patience, and endurance. His choice was not simple, nor purely aesthetic. There were risks, challenges, and sacrifices. Any theory must account for the practical realities as well as the philosophical or artistic ones. Still, the human mind craves narrative. We want reasons. We want causes. We try to interpret silence, absence, and shadow. In doing so, we acknowledge our fascination with someone who walked so deliberately away from the world above. Each theory, artist, fugitive, hermit, gives us a lens to understand without claiming to know. What is certain is that he lived with intention. He made choices about light, space, sound, and objects. He valued order, beauty, and reflection. He moved quietly but deliberately through tunnels that could easily disorient anyone. He created a life that balanced survival, contemplation, and artistry. That much is visible, tangible, and respectful of reality. Speculation is also a way to connect to him. We may never know his name or his full story, but imagining possibilities allows us to enter his world a little. To feel, briefly, the decisions required to live below the city for years. To understand why someone might choose darkness, and what that darkness might offer. In the end, theories serve more than curiosity. They teach us about choice, solitude, and human adaptability. They remind us that people are complex. One explanation rarely fits entirely. And perhaps the greatest respect we can offer him is to consider multiple perspectives while acknowledging the limits of what we can know. He left no sensational story, no dramatic confession, no heroic or tragic end. He left a life constructed quietly, in harmony with the catacombs, with respect for history, death, and his own presence. Theories are our way of honoring that careful, deliberate life, not by claiming to know it, but by reflecting on it. Pause for a moment. Think of the candles, the books, the shadows moving softly across the stone. Consider the care, the thought, the subtle beauty of a life chosen underground. Let the quiet inspire reflection. Theories will come and go, but the reality of his choices remains. Next, we will explore the final reflections. What his life underground teaches us about mortality, presence, and the art of living deliberately in a world that never slows down. Above ground, Paris continued as if nothing had changed. Traffic roared. Streetlights blinked. Cafes poured coffee into the hands of people who rarely looked up. Millions of lives moved through the city every day, brushing past history, brushing past each other, brushing past the ground beneath their feet without thinking twice about what lay below. And beneath it all, the man lived quietly, invisible, almost mythical. The contrast is striking. The noise, the hurry, the schedules above, and the deliberate, slow life below. He was part of the city, and yet completely separate from it. His world existed in parallel, unnoticed and unacknowledged. Cities are strange that way. They carry millions of souls in close proximity, yet foster invisibility like a skill. People can exist side by side for years without truly seeing each other. In a place like Paris, anonymity is inevitable. And in the man's case, it was total. No one above ground had any idea he existed. Not neighbors. Not authorities. Not friends or family. He was forgotten before he even disappeared underground. This is not tragedy. It is observation. Life in cities often erases individuality. Names become addresses. Faces become statistics. People exist in motion, rarely pausing to notice details, to pause for reflection. The man in the catacombs thrived precisely because he understood this. He did not fight the anonymity of the city. He stepped into it, metaphorically and literally, and let the world above carry on. Consider the sidewalks teeming with commuters. Some glance at cracks in the pavement. Few notice the subtle vibrations as stone shifts beneath centuries of weight. Even fewer would imagine a life unfolding below, a person choosing darkness while the city rushes on. He could move beneath them for years, and they would never know. That is modern isolation magnified. Millions together, yet completely unaware of each other's inner worlds. This contrast illuminates something profound about human existence. We often think of loneliness as a choice. We think of isolation as punishment. But in modern cities, loneliness is structural. Crowds are abundant. Noise is constant. Yet true connection is rare. Above, people rush past one another, talking, texting, staring at screens, thinking about tomorrow instead of noticing today. Below, he lived intentionally, fully present, despite the absence of witnesses. Silent coexistence defines his story. He did not seek validation from those above. He did not demand attention. His life was invisible by design or maybe by accident, but it coexisted with the city above in perfect balance. Noise and solitude, motion and stillness, public and private, all layered over the same geography. Imagine the irony. Millions of Parisians walk daily, talking, laughing, arguing, yet none glance into the labyrinth under their feet. The man watches, learns, and records in fragments, fully aware of the world above but untouched by its chaos. His perspective is rare. He experiences the city without being consumed by it. He knows its pulse, its rhythm, but moves to a different beat entirely. The city that forgot him reflects a broader truth about society. Even when surrounded by people, we can be invisible. Not because of choice alone, but because modern life often obscures the individual. The man's underground existence exaggerates this reality, holding a mirror to a civilization that prioritizes motion over presence. His invisibility also grants freedom. He is unseen, unbothered, unmeasured. The city above may judge, ignore, or overlook thousands of lives daily, but below, life can be curated exactly as one wishes. The freedom to move, to live, to think, to create, unmonitored, unrecorded, is a rare gift in the modern world. Yet there is melancholy here. Not tragedy, but quiet reflection. A life so deliberate, so conscious, yet wholly unrecognized by the millions above. The city marches on, unconcerned. Streets, cafes, and metros continue to pulse with life while the catacombs remain a hidden sanctuary. The man's story exists in parallel, like a ghost tethered not to memory, but to silence. This contrast between the living city and the unseen man deepens the mystery. It reminds us that presence is not always visible. Contribution is not always acknowledged. Existence does not always demand witnesses. And sometimes the truest measure of life is not what is observed, but what is cultivated quietly, deliberately, away from the world's gaze. Rest here for a moment. Think of the millions of steps above, the hum of Parisian life, and the patient, attentive life unfolding beneath. Notice how the same space can hold both frenzy and serenity, motion and stillness, recognition and complete oblivion. The man and the city that forgot him are bound together, not by visibility, but by coexistence. The tunnels below are not opposition to the streets above. They are an extension of the city's rhythm, a hidden layer where time slows and life can be measured differently. Next, we will explore the final reflections, drawing together the story of a man, his choices, and what it teaches us about life, solitude, and the ways we measure presence in a world that rarely stops to notice. The catacombs of Paris are not what they once were. What was once a sprawling, largely unmapped labyrinth is now a carefully guarded, partially restricted underground world. Visitors can wander certain tunnels, guided along paths carved for safety, but much of the network remains off-limits, protected by concrete walls, fences, and ever-watchful security cameras. Modern life has changed the catacombs, but not entirely. The bones remain. The silence persists, and traces of the man who lived among them linger in subtle ways. His legacy, whether intentional or not, contributed to how people think about these tunnels today. There's respect now, even among those who explore the hidden sections illegally, the cataphiles. Cataphiles are a fascinating subculture. These are the people who still venture beyond the mapped passages, often at great risk. They maintain their own codes, leave behind subtle markers for others, and treat the underground with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. Some are drawn by history, some by adventure, some by the thrill of being unseen, moving beneath millions of unaware Parisians above. And some, perhaps, are following breadcrumbs left by the man himself, drawn to spaces where he once walked. Urban myths thrive in this environment. Stories of ghosts, hidden treasures, secret rooms, and mysterious residents circulate quietly among explorers. Yet most myths, when approached carefully, reveal practical truths. Passages collapse, rooms remain untouched for decades, and life underground is a delicate balance between human will and natural forces. The legend of the man who lived among the bones adds weight to these stories, giving them a kernel of historical truth that makes them even more compelling. Preservation has become a priority. Authorities have learned that too much curiosity without care can destroy both the structure and the sense of history. Walls are reinforced. Fragile sections are blocked. Artifacts, even small carvings and objects left by long-gone residents, are documented, cataloged, and sometimes removed for safety. Preservation is not just about keeping the bones intact. It is about respecting the lives and choices of the people who once moved in harmony with the underground. For the casual visitor, the catacombs are haunting yet educational. Guided tours highlight history, geology, and the scale of the underground network. Informational plaques explain why bones were moved, the quarry's history, and how the city evolved above. There is awe, yes, but also a sense of grounding. You can imagine what life was like down here, how it felt to navigate the silent, bone-lined halls, but you are protected from the more dangerous, unmapped sections. For the curious, the cataphiles, and historians, the catacombs are still a place of wonder. The man's story lives on quietly in whispers, legends, and the careful maintenance of hidden rooms. His deliberate choices in arranging his space, leaving traces, and living in silence inspire respect. Modern explorers often describe a subtle feeling of being watched, not in fear, but as if the tunnels themselves recognize a kindred spirit who once moved thoughtfully among the shadows. Access is limited, yes, but curiosity persists. Maps exist, but they are incomplete. People still discover hidden corners, sometimes accidentally, sometimes deliberately. The catacombs have become a blend of controlled tourism, careful preservation, and underground culture. The modern experience is safer, more informed, and perhaps more respectful than the past, but it retains the thrill of secrecy and the echo of centuries. The legacy of the man who lived here is more than legend. It is a lesson. A reminder that spaces can shape people as much as people shape spaces. His presence, while no longer physically there, informs how others approach the tunnels. Safety, respect, observation, and patience are key. His life underground has become a touchstone for understanding solitude, adaptation, and the quiet power of intentional living. Above ground, Paris continues to buzz, unaware of these hidden worlds and the lessons they hold. Below, the catacombs remain a place where history, silence, and human curiosity converge. Modern visitors encounter the bones, the tunnels, and the traces of past lives, gaining perspective on mortality, resilience, and the delicate balance of life lived in shadow. The catacombs today are a place of coexistence. Public and private, historical and contemporary, seen and unseen. They remind us that human lives are layered, some lived in full view, others quietly, deliberately, beneath the city that forgets them. The echoes of the past inform the present, and the present safeguards that past, ensuring that both are respected. Pause for a moment and imagine walking these tunnels today. Hear the controlled drip of water, the soft flicker of emergency lights, and the quiet footsteps of careful explorers. Notice the stillness that persists, even amid occasional whispers and camera clicks. Feel the balance between history and modernity, between freedom and restriction, between curiosity and respect. The catacombs endure because of their careful guardianship and the stories that persist. Stories of anonymous lives, deliberate solitude, and the timeless pull of the underground. Modern life may have brought rules, maps, and safety measures, but the essence of the catacombs, the calm shadowed halls, the bones stacked in reverence, the quiet lessons of presence, remains unchanged. And in that calm, we remember the man who lived there, not as a mystery, not as legend alone, but as a life lived fully, deliberately, and quietly, beneath a city that could never truly see him, yet continues to echo with his choices. Solitude is a strange thing. Not the same as loneliness, though people often confuse the two. One is chosen. One is imposed. One can heal, teach, and sharpen the mind. The other can hurt, consume, and shrink the spirit. The man who lived in the catacombs experienced the first kind. Solitude by choice. Deep, intentional, prolonged solitude. And it changed him, layer by layer, like water wearing away stone, slowly, subtly, with patience and persistence. Being alone underground does something you don't notice immediately. You start to hear differently. Not just the sounds, like dripping water or the faint scuttle of a rat, but your own thoughts. They grow louder, clearer, more precise. You begin to recognize patterns in your mind that noise and distraction usually drown out. Decision-making sharpens. Observation becomes second nature. You notice what others might call trivial, the tilt of a candle, the way shadows curve across a skull, but these small details matter. They are markers of presence, proof that you are alive and attentive. History gives us plenty of examples. Hermits in deserts, monks in monasteries, philosophers in quiet rooms, people who voluntarily remove themselves from society to think, create, or understand life more fully. Like them, he discovered that solitude is a teacher. It does not merely provide space from others. It teaches self-awareness. It allows the mind to stretch, to wander, to imagine, and sometimes to confront uncomfortable truths about desire, fear, and mortality. Solitude also sharpens the imagination. Without the noise of modern life, traffic, notifications, endless chatter, the mind turns inward and outward at the same time. You invent stories, solve problems differently, appreciate textures and rhythms unnoticed by those caught in daily motion. He read, wrote, watched films, and arranged objects not because someone would notice, but because the act itself mattered. Solitude gave his inner world depth. He became a curator of thought, taste, and memory. Yet, even in the richest solitude, human beings are not entirely self-sufficient. Connection matters. We are social animals. What he experienced was not loneliness, but a heightened awareness of what human presence adds. Silence becomes a mirror. Absence of others highlights longing, empathy, curiosity, and imagination. In the quiet of the tunnels, he learned about human connection indirectly, by thinking about it, reflecting on it, imagining lives above and around him, even if he did not participate directly. Psychology tells us that prolonged solitude can reshape perception. Time feels different. Emotions intensify. The mind can process ideas more clearly or, conversely, spiral into obsession if one is unprepared. He maintained balance by creating routines, rituals, and deliberate activities. Reading, candle rituals, art, film, all became anchors. They tethered him to a sense of purpose, grounding him even as the outside world disappeared. Solitude without structure can overwhelm. Solitude with care can liberate. Historical parallels are fascinating. Diogenes and his barrel, wandering philosophers of ancient Greece, monks in silent retreats. These lives show that voluntary isolation can heighten insight. The man in the catacombs follows that lineage, yet with modern nuance. He contended not just with spiritual or philosophical questions, but with practical survival, urban infrastructure, and the literal weight of history above him. His solitude was both physical and psychological, a full immersion into a world of self-reliance, observation, and reflection. Reflection in solitude does not only turn inward, it allows empathy to expand. When you are removed from the social swirl, you notice the structures and systems that govern life above. You consider human fragility, mortality, ambition, and folly. Underground, in candlelight, every shadow of a skull becomes a teacher. Every object, organized and cared for, becomes a meditation on intentional living. Solitude also teaches humor in subtle ways. Small absurdities, like arranging bones as placeholders for objects or noting the dramatic effect of a candle stub, become private jokes. Reminders that life is lived best when observed with gentle attention, even in darkness. Humor underlines the humanity that remains, despite isolation. For listeners imagining this life, consider your own relationship with quiet. How does solitude feel? What parts of yourself only emerge when the noise fades? The man's experience invites reflection, not as an example to copy, but as a mirror for introspection. We are all shaped by our surroundings. Even brief periods of intentional solitude can reveal what matters, what distracts, and what we might otherwise overlook. He discovered that the body and mind adapt. He moved confidently, cooked carefully, slept in rhythms shaped by candles, and maintained mental clarity. The mind, when allowed focus, can achieve remarkable depth. Patterns, ideas, creative thoughts, all become accessible when distractions are minimized. Solitude clarifies, sharpens, and magnifies consciousness. Yet, perhaps the most important lesson is balance. Solitude without engagement is hollow. Connection without reflection is shallow. He found equilibrium by creating, observing, and reflecting. He allowed silence to teach, curiosity to guide, and thought to deepen. The catacombs became a laboratory for existence itself, where one could study life, death, art, and thought, all while living quietly among the bones. Solitude shapes perspective. It teaches patience. It nurtures inner clarity. It reminds us that human connection, while valuable, is not the only path to understanding oneself or the world. The man in the catacombs mastered this. He balanced isolation with curiosity, reflection with observation, and practical living with philosophical exploration. So take a moment. Listen to your own thoughts. Notice your surroundings. Consider how solitude can be a teacher, not punishment. Reflect on the spaces you inhabit, the rhythms you follow, and the quiet presence you bring to your own life. In the end, what solitude does to a man is profound. It strips away distraction. It heightens awareness. It teaches patience, observation, and intentionality. It offers the chance to live deliberately, to think deeply, and to measure life by presence, care, and mindfulness. And as we conclude this exploration, we can carry a quiet lesson with us, that even in silence, even in darkness, life is rich, full, and quietly extraordinary when approached with awareness and intention. Time moves differently underground. Days blend into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, and eventually, even memory seems to fold quietly into itself. And then, he was gone. The man who had lived among the bones, who had curated his world with care, who had left traces in every candle, every book, every shadowed corner vanished. No one saw him leave. No one announced his absence. The catacombs swallowed him the way they swallow sound, leaving only subtle traces behind, like whispers that persist long after a voice has faded. His home remained, but only partially. Objects were moved, rearranged by unseen forces, or slowly claimed by time. Candles left smoldering on shelves hardened into waxy sculptures. Books lay open, their pages frozen in mid-turn, as if waiting for someone to return and continue reading. The projector, once humming softly with flickering images, sat silent, waiting for a hand that would never come again. Empty tunnels now stretched ahead, vast and quiet. Footsteps echoed differently in his absence. Shadows no longer danced to the rhythm of a careful life lived deliberately. The walls seemed to sigh. Absence has a presence of its own. You can feel it more profoundly than any object. It presses gently, almost imperceptibly, against your mind and body, reminding you that someone who once shaped the space is no longer there to do so. He was never found, not by authorities, not by curious explorers, not by anyone who might have hoped to understand, witness, or interact. The deliberate choices that had guided his existence underground, the carefully collapsed entrances, the hidden paths, the subtle placement of breadcrumbs, ensure that his disappearance remained total, complete, and enigmatic. He left a story, but no resolution. Some say he merged with the darkness itself, that he became part of the tunnels he had inhabited so carefully. Others suggest he planned everything with precision, leaving no evidence of his final movements, no trail to follow, no hint of a destination. Perhaps he walked further into unmapped sections, deeper into silence than anyone dared to go. Or perhaps he simply stepped out quietly into the city above, choosing the world only when he wished, leaving behind the catacombs as a testament to a life lived in intention. Candle wax hardened into subtle sculptures, almost like memorials. They mark the presence that once filled the space, now frozen. They are reminders of rhythm, routine, and life paused. Dust gathers in corners, absorbing the quiet. Bones remain, untouched and patient, witnesses to what was, what is, and what may never be again. The catacombs are alive in their stillness, even when the one who animated them is gone. Absence, in this context, is more than the lack of a body. It is the echo of care, of thought, of deliberate life choices. Every object, every carved mark, every organized space tells a story that continues even when the storyteller is gone. There is a soft lesson here. Presence is not only physical. Presence is also influence, arrangement, rhythm, and memory. The man's life remains quietly as guidance for those willing to notice. Urban explorers, historians, and cataphiles often pause in the areas he once inhabited. They speak softly, out of habit or respect, sometimes joking to break the tension of the vast emptiness. Some leave small marks, little gestures acknowledging someone who lived fully yet invisibly. They don't pretend to understand him completely. They never could, but they sense the deliberate care and notice it in turn. Modern visitors can wander the catacombs without ever knowing he existed. Yet those who trace the hidden paths, follow the traces of objects left behind, or stumble upon the faint remains of his routines feel a peculiar intimacy. They sense the discipline, patience, and creativity that defined him. And in that sense, even after vanishing, he continues to teach. Absence has power. Mystery has presence. Silence speaks. It is tempting to want closure, to know exactly where he went, why he left, or what he thought in his final days. But the catacombs are not designed to satisfy curiosity completely. They reward careful observation, reflection, and patience. The unresolved nature of his disappearance preserves the subtle magic of his life. It is soft, elusive, and hauntingly beautiful. He disappeared, leaving no drama, no final act, no confrontation with the world above. That itself is remarkable. In an age where every action is recorded, documented, and shared, he claimed a final freedom, to vanish entirely, to leave the narrative unfinished, to let the catacombs hold him in quiet memory rather than in public spectacle. Even now, the tunnels feel shaped by him. Objects frozen in use, books paused mid-sentence, candles hardened in small ceremonies. They are quiet witnesses to a life that embraced solitude, curiosity, and intentional living. The story does not end with a body or a confession. It ends with traces, shadows, echoes, wax, silence, and perhaps that is fitting. After all, he chose the catacombs for their quiet, for their stillness, for the way life could be measured deliberately without interruption. His disappearance mirrors that choice. He stepped away not with noise, but with grace, leaving a presence that lingers precisely because it cannot be fully grasped. Pause. Imagine walking the silent tunnels, tracing the faint lines of candle wax, noticing the careful arrangements of objects, and feeling the absence that has become its own presence. The story is unresolved, yet it is complete in another sense. It reflects a life lived deliberately, with care, patience, and quiet mastery. The man who vanished into silence remains a part of the catacombs. Not physically, not visibly, but in essence. His life, and the way he chose to leave it, continues to teach about solitude, presence, mortality, and the delicate art of living quietly and intentionally in a world that rarely stops to notice. And in that gentle, unresolved silence, we are invited to reflect, not just on him, but on our own lives, our choices, and the spaces we inhabit, both above and below the surface of daily existence. Now, let your eyes grow heavy. Let your body sink into the mattress or pillow, feeling the weight of the day ease away. Breathe slowly, gently. Now, like the soft rise and fall of the city above, humming faintly through walls and streets, distant and warm. In and out. Above you, Paris moves as it always does. Cars roll, footsteps echo, laughter drifts down narrow streets. But beneath the city, deep in the quiet catacombs, silence stretches endlessly. Bones stacked carefully, candles flickering softly, shadows that know no rush. The world above continues its hurry, but below, all is calm, measured, and still. Imagine walking slowly through those tunnels, the air cool, the stone walls smooth under your fingertips. Every step is deliberate, careful. No need to rush. No one watching. Your breath matches the rhythm of the underground air, steady, slow, calm. In and out, in and out. The shadows stretch long, candlelight warm and flickering. Each skull, each femur, each carefully placed object holds a story. They are silent companions, witnesses to lives that have passed, lives that linger in the stillness. You notice them but do not need to name them. They exist in quiet harmony with the tunnels, as you exist here now, drifting toward rest. Imagine the soft patter of water somewhere far off, a drip echoing faintly through a distant corridor. It is not loud or alarming. It is the gentle heartbeat of the underground, a natural rhythm that lulls you deeper into calm. Let your mind follow it. Let it remind you that stillness is its own kind of motion. Even here, beneath the busy city, life flows quietly. Breathe again, deeply, slowly. In and out, in and out. Feel your shoulders release, your jaw unclench, your hands relax. The air is cool, steady, clean. You are moving slowly through the catacombs in your imagination, safe and calm, guided by the soft rhythm of your own breathing. The man who once lived here is long gone, but his presence lingers in traces. Candles left to harden, books left open mid-sentence, shadows arranged as if in conversation with a faint light. His life is quiet now, but it hums gently in the tunnels, like a lullaby sung to stone and air. Let that lullaby carry you towards sleep. Above, the city hums softly. Below, the catacombs wait in stillness. You are somewhere between these worlds, safe, observing, breathing with the slow pulse of ancient stone. In and out, in and out. Picture the flicker of a candle over a row of skulls. Shadows shift in a gentle dance, slow and predictable. You do not need to watch closely. Let your mind follow the rhythm. Let it ease your thoughts. Let the quiet fill every corner, every crevice of your mind. Now imagine the faint echo of footsteps that are not yours, just soft impressions left by those who walked here before. They do not disturb you. They are part of the rhythm. A reminder that lives can touch the world quietly, carefully, without need for recognition. Your own life, your own breath, is part of a similar quiet rhythm now. In, out, in, out. The tunnels stretch endlessly. Your steps slow, then stop. Candlelight softens, then fades. Shadows settle into stillness. Bones, once moved by hands, remain in careful order. You too remain in order, in peace and calm. Let your body match the stillness around you. Let your mind drift. Imagine the distant hum of the city above, the faint glow of streetlights filtering through cracks far overhead. It's gentle, comforting. You are below it all, safe, silent, breathing with slow, measured rhythm. In, out, in, out. Perhaps in your dreams, the catacombs stretch further than you could ever imagine. Tunnels twist, shadows play, and the faint scent of history floats through the air. You are a visitor here, safe and calm, observing without concern, moving without haste. Every corridor, every flickering flame, every bone becomes part of a gentle lullaby, a soft story whispered to carry you into deeper sleep. And now let your thoughts drift even further. Let the rhythm of breathing guide you deeper. The tunnels extend endlessly, shadows soften, candlelight dims. In, out, in, out. You are floating between the city above and the quiet below, resting in a space that exists for calm, reflection, and gentle imagination. Every sound, every shadow, every flicker is slow and deliberate. The city's hum fades slightly in your mind. Only the soft, steady rhythm remains. In, out, in, out. The catacombs, the bones, the faint traces of life live deliberately. They all accompany you as you drift further into sleep. No one will disturb you here. You are safe. The tunnels embrace quiet. The shadows welcome stillness. Your breath matches the rhythm of stone, of history, of calm. In, out, in, out. And as you sink further, the mystery of the man who lived here continues. He vanishes into shadows, but his presence lingers in calm traces, in careful arrangements, in the quiet heartbeat of the underground. You are part of it now, softly, gently, peacefully. Rest here. Breathe. In, out, in, out. Let the city above move without concern. Let the tunnels below hold their secrets. Let your mind drift, your body relax, your thoughts soften. Sleep beneath the city, where silence and calm guide you, where mystery continues softly into dreams, and where the story of quiet life, careful choices, and gentle rhythm carries you fully into rest.